When I was just 15 years old, I built a school in Africa. Over the span of just 1 year, my team and I raised over $38,000 for our sponsored village and personally flew to Malawi to help with the construction of the school. This is a building that would go on to provide education opportunities for more than 1,000 Malawian children. Our school would stand to become the cornerstone for shutting down the cycle of poverty and eradicating the developing world's high illiteracy rates. You know, all sorts of heroic, world-saving stuff, right? Except it wasn't exactly like that. And I'm gonna be honest here. At first, this volunteering trip made me feel good about myself. It made me feel like I was someone important, like someone who could save the world. But the truth is, the reality of our time there was not what I'd hoped it would be. Instead, it involved less world-saving and more, well, standing around. You see, the purpose of this trip was to help the village build a new school with the funds that we had raised. Now, I don't know why this didn't occur to me beforehand, but I don't know how to build a school, period. That's a picture of me standing on a pile of sand, watching someone shove sand into a bucket. I don't know what I was doing. As you can tell, this was not even something remotely part of my skill set. No, what really happened was that we were occasionally digging some dirt out of a hole or standing in a line passing bricks to the people who were actually doing the work. The whole time I was there, I felt like I was doing one of those awkward sidestep shuffles that you do with people that you bump into on the street and you're both walking on the same lane, but you try to let the other person go by. That. I was constantly trying to find the balance between letting the experts do the work and not seeming like I wasn't doing any work. It was because of this experience that got me to think, how can we ensure the quality of volunteering? How can we ensure that volunteers that are going on the same trips as the one I was on are efficient and effective? But before we get to the rest, let's take a look at the concept of voluntourism. It's made up of two words, volunteer and tourism. It's typically when a group of people sign up to volunteer overseas while they travel the world. Today, voluntourism is an $184 billion industry with more than 197 million volunteers worldwide, according to the United Nations. The good news is that this means we have immense potential to tap into this monumental amount of investment and enthusiasm to truly benefit the world. The problem, though, with this kind of service trips is that volunteers, like me, are often not well trained or well equipped for the job that they're meant to do. Additionally, the short amount of time that volunteers spend on the project means that more often than not, they do not get to finish what they started or even be able to pick up a new skill set on the job. This is my main concern with the amount of volunteers that are enthusiastically embarking on these trips. I'd like to talk to you today about the potential harms of voluntourism and also give you 3 tips on what you could do to avoid that awkward sidestep shuffle on your own volunteering journey. But it's important to note that even though I would like to point out some negative aspects concerning this relatively new industry, I am in no way discouraging people from volunteering. I believe that service is critical to the development of our world as a whole and gives us a chance to give back to our communities. However, if volunteering is not done right, it may sometimes end up doing more harm than good. Overseas service groups oftentimes reinforce the cycle of passivity by asking for the local community to remain the grateful recipients of help, even though the volunteers are clearly not meant for the task. And I guess what struck me the most on my volunteer trip to Malawi was the exaggeration of my status as a volunteer for this exact reason. Even though we were clearly not meant for construction of a school or laying bricks for laboratories, we were still welcomed into the village with an extensive ceremony. Picture this. We drive up our bus down the road, already crossing the village, with hundreds of children rolling along the side of us. We disembark into a sea of singing, dancing children. There's eyes looking out at us like we were the light of their lives. They then lead us towards an extensive ceremony of what was essentially the entire village thanking us for our arrival. They're brave volunteers. We were sitting on chairs, and the villagers were sitting on the ground around us, chiefs included. The most difficult thing for me to know at that point was knowing that the brave volunteers that they'd come to celebrate were actually people that were drastically underqualified for the job. I can only guess that this is because I envisioned myself to play a much larger role in this project, a vision which I ultimately did not get to fulfill. With this, I bring you my first tip. Switch to a mindset of learning as you volunteer. Think about what you would like to give back to the community you're serving and what you would like to get out of it for your own personal growth. If you're going on a construction project as someone who's inexperienced in building, there's no need to feel like you won't be useful. What's most important is that you take the time to learn about the project and the organization beforehand and adjust your skills accordingly. Experts at Vanderbilt University propose the idea of service learning, a type of volunteering where learning occurs through a cycle of action. This applies for budding volunteers or students wishing to improve their skills in biology, mathematics, education, you name it. If you're a young volunteer or someone new to a particular type of project, switch your mindset to that of a learner. Instead of having an unrealistic ideal of how the trip will be, get in touch with your abilities and be prepared to learn from community members and other volunteers that are more experienced than you. For example, on my most recent trip to Happy Caravan, a school for refugee children in Greece, I and another peer were assigned to oversee the painting of a mural on the side of the school. Keeping in mind that even though we are high school art students, this would be the first time either one of us have painted off of anything but a canvas. Still, we were eager to begin until we were stopped by a mysterious man later known as Abdul. As he took the lead, Abdul told us the best way to scrape off old paint, as well as various painting techniques in order to ensure the best finish coating on the wall. By learning from experts in the community, we were able to ensure that our work was in the best quality it could have been in and reinforce a stronger, mutually beneficial relationship with the community that we were serving. Another most important thing about service is that you are always paying attention to pay respect to the community you're serving. However, in order to do so, we need to take charge of our learning, our experience, and our work. One way I recommend for you to do this is by researching for organizations that are smaller in scale and more dependent on the flow of volunteers to do their work. This way, you'll be able to have a much larger impact on the work that you do, as well as the role that you will play in that project. With this in mind, I bring you my second tip. Always take the time to research the financial transparency of an organization before you donate. A common criticism on the field of volunteerism is that the lack of financial transparency by the funds that volunteers raise and donate. Oftentimes, money given to organizations by volunteers may not be used to the best of their abilities. This was exactly what happened on my most recent volunteering trip to Malawi. The $38,000 that we had donated were not to put to their best use. They were not financially transparent to us. We had thought that the money was going to go to buy materials to build the school, but throughout the trip, we realized that there was no clear, broken down list of the expenses that were available to us. So, as all good volunteers do, we asked the locals. It turns out the materials that we had thought we had donated our money to were actually completely produced and bought by the village. Everything down to the sand, the cement, the bricks, even the shovels and the hose. So this begs the question, where did our money go? It certainly didn't go to the materials like we had thought, and it most likely didn't go to expanding another school either. This is why volunteers need to actively take charge of the expenses of their donations. Now, the unfortunate truth is that the money most likely instead went into taking care of us, their volunteers. This includes our transportation, our food, our shelter, our country guides, and even our translators. Essentially, we were spending thousands of dollars to go halfway across the world and volunteer. That's thousands of dollars that could be directly donated to frontline organizations fighting the Amazon rainforest fires or buying a new caravan for a family of refugees in Jordan. Sustainable tourism expert Nancy Gard-McGee says as many as 10 million volunteers are spending up to $2 billion a year for the opportunity to travel with a purpose. If the majority of those $2 billion could instead be directly donated to improving local infrastructure or donated to organizations that are doing things first thing on the ground, we would be able to create a much more efficient and effective cycle of volunteering. With this, I bring you my third and final tip. Strive to become a volunteer from home. Volunteering doesn't mean that you have to physically be on a construction site or actively teaching in a classroom. It can also mean that you're participating through donating, doing behind-the-scenes work, or raising awareness through influencing others. By choosing to share your time between experiences overseas and volunteering from home, you're able to create even more financial contribution to organizations that are giving back real skills on the ground. It's important to note that not everyone needs to be a teacher or a construction site worker to be a volunteer. You can also be proactive by donating to an organization that you are certain you believe in the cause of. If you believe in something, you can also be proactive about it. Being a volunteer, building a school in Malawi isn't a bad thing. It just matters in the way that you do it.